Thank you very much. People have been walking for thousands of years, and yet there has not been an innovation in the 21st century to really change a fundamental aspect of human behavior. However, Plantiga is in an excellent position to change all that. Not only revolutionizing something that people do every single day of their lives, there's also an opportunity to monetize and track an activity that has never been monitored before with unlimited potential. It's truly an exciting time. Right now, the company has a custom, smart, and adaptive product. It's in development, and it's an excellent product, but there haven't been any sales as of yet. But by Q1 2018, there's a potential to sell 250,000 units, netting you a very substantial revenue, and we'll tell you exactly how to get there. But first, the big question that has to be answered is stepping into the right direction. What is the first step to being a leader in the custom, smart, adaptive footwear segment? And within that, you can see three different pillars. The first one is the fact that there's no committed customer segment. That question has to be answered. The second is there's difficulty innovating and protecting the IP, which is your product. Without IP, giants like Nike, Adidas, they can easily replicate it and within weeks take you out of the market. And of course, the missing human and financial capital. Expansion is meaningless if there's no resource for you to get there. And in order for you to get there, you need people. For people, unfortunately, this isn't utopia and you need money. And we'll tell you exactly how to do that.
So now let's dive a bit more into the issues analysis that we have identified for your company. The first issue that we see is, where is your customer segment? Where should you focus on? As my partner identified before, the competition is fierce. Nike and Adidas own this wearable technology market. As well, you have not identified that clear segment that is going to be your niche market, and this broad focus is really affecting your growth potential. And the third point being here, with the amount of growth that we see in this market for wearable technologies, you really have to position yourself to create that competitive advantage.
So why is it important to pick a key customer segment? We need to pick someone that can understand and work with us to develop the final iteration of product, because in the software as a service, we really need to understand what the customer is going to gain from this. We want to lock on and gain traction with this customer and eventually leverage this for other industries. With 24 sensors taking in 10 different granularities of data, we have over 63 trillion different pieces of opportunity to measure. And we need to understand what is most important to a key customer segment and deliver that value to them. Finally, we need to protect whatever we make. As we know, this market is growing from 1.5 billion last year to over 6 billion in just a few short years from now. And competitors are going to be doing everything they can to try and capture all that market share. We need to be on top of this, and we need to innovate.
Now let's talk again about the pieces that's missing. So in terms of human capital, there's no plan in place for post-data testing development. So that requires a developer. Data and computing ecosystem has to be developed in order for the data to be processed. What use is 63 trillion pieces of data if it can't be processed into a meaningful way? And there are other post-consumer sales efforts needed, and there's IP patent copyright protection, complex tasks that requires a lawyer. And the financial capital to pay for it all. The good news is that there are sources, low-hanging fruit, that have not been taken advantage of yet, and it has to be exploited in order for the company to really move forward without paying the price.
So now that we've looked at the three issues that we've identified for your company, we're going to suggest some criteria that must be met going forward for your company to be successful. So with this, we see the first criteria being affordability. Your company, after this first very productive year, is posting a $650,000 loss, but it really needs to leverage these relationships that it has existing right now to really get full value from this criteria. The second being a product that is very scalable. We see that with these 4 distinct markets and the potential for international expansion, that you really have to make the most of this. And the last and most important is speed. With a board of directors meeting in 2 weeks, and these giant monolithic competitors that are in the space that you would like to be in right now, you have to move quickly.
So in the wearable technology space, we see that there are kind of 3 broad options for your company to take right now. We could remain with the mass market approach and reach out to the consumer and try and get them through different channels and see if we can get some adoption this way. As well, we can take a second strategy, which is really focusing on a key customer segment, trying to understand what would be some specific benefits that we can leverage for Plantika for this specific customer, see if we can gain some traction there. Finally, we could also position the company for a strategic sale. As we said, there's many large competitors that are in the space, and they're very favorable for what you have, which is a lot of protection of intellectual property. Let's take these criteria that we've had out and lay them against this alternative. In retaining our mass market approach right now, we feel that it doesn't quite satisfy the #1 criteria, which is speed. We can't reach these consumers directly and clearly identify and clearly explain to them what the benefit of this technology is. So we don't think that we would get rapid market adoption at the rate that we need to for this company to stay afloat. So moving on to the second alternative, really identifying a key customer segment. Now, we will go into a lot more detail into this, but we feel that in terms of affordability, working with someone and working especially with an agile framework and getting requirements from the customer and feeding back in an iterative cycle is going to be one of the cheap, more affordable ways in getting a product that not only will get market acceptance, but get you to that market as quick as possible.
Sorry, Kevin.
Yes?
So it looks, just skipping ahead in your slides here, it looks like your intention is to focus in on some military customers. And
Yes.
First would be the Singapore military, is that correct?
That is completely correct.
Given that one of your key decision criteria is speed, I'd love to hear how long you would expect it to take to sign some kind of profit-related agreement with the Singapore military, and to show us the funding for our company to make sure that we can last that long to see that profit.
Okay. So we definitely have, later in the presentation coming up, a specific timeline that will show when we expect to have specific relationships in the door, as well as we do have a budget that can kind of show you our cash flow projections over the next while. So I can address that point in much more detail later. But what can I say in the meantime is that we expect about a 1.5 to 2 year turnover rate in terms of getting contracts signed with the Singapore military and start to seeing some revenue generation going on. But I will address that point in much more detail later.
In the interest of time, it would be great if you could get there pretty soon.
Okay, great. So clearly we do not feel that you should sell your company. That's something we do not believe in, so we'll kind of move past this point right here. And we believe that it is focusing on a key customer segment, and more specifically, the Singapore military market. So let's see what we mean by this.
And going to the recommendation, why the military? So let's take a step back. The big reason for the military is the military in the government has the highest level of discretionary spending, and it's also famous for being an early adopter, whether that's the Department of Defense in the US or whether it's the Singaporean Army in Singapore. This makes it an ideal opportunity for Plantika, which is a technology that no one has ever seen before. And specifically, why Singapore? One of the few key reasons why is that $132,000 per active personnel in the Army. Singapore has the highest rate of spending per capita, other than North Korea, which we do believe will have some difficulties with the government. So we'll leave that option on the table. For now, we do see Singapore as the next best option.
So now I'd like to my partners walk you through the quantitative side of why we see Singapore as the correct option for your company. The qualitative side is that you're positioned already to achieve in this market. Your Senior Vice President, Brian Tracy, has over 20 years of military experience, as well as he is already established in the Singapore market. So we feel that gaining a patent access here, and because you already have patents in China and Israel, we feel that it will not be too difficult to get a patent success in this market. Additionally, we also have identified a company, ELS Defense, that you can partner with in a their manufacturing to really win at this product that you have. And the next movement, of course, is moving on to Israel as well as then the United States. So,
if I may interrupt,
sure.
ELS Defense, are there any risks to being associated with it?
So they currently right now actually are one of the suppliers for the Singaporean military. So at this current moment, we don't see any risks that we have identified with this company. Of course, they do business with many of the countries around in the area, such as China, as well as they do business in the Middle East as well. So this would always be something that we would have to address, being having a dream of supporting this USA down the road in the retail industry. So back to where I was left off here. So First, we believe that Brian Tracy leveraging that opportunity that he already has established in the Singaporean market is key. The second being making sure that you do file for a patent in the Singaporean government is very important as well. And then really getting your product out there and going to the Ministry of Defense, contacting them and demoing your product to them. And the final point is really looking at ELS again. So we see that because they are a key manufacturer of footwear in the Singaporean business, we feel that a strategic partnership with them and the patents that you have and the different technology that you currently have will create a very valuable partnership. So,
I have a quick question. Sure. I assume that this technology is going to give the Singaporean Army a competitive advantage on the battlefield. How likely are they going to give up that technology and allow it to go into places like the U.S. has much more current experience in testing technology like this in real combat situations? I'm curious how are they going to be willing to give this up and let it go into the U.S. and into the consumer market where the U.S. military might get a hold of it?
I can take that question actually. So one of the patents that have been issued is actually a Chinese patent. So as we all know, the Chinese Army is the largest in the world by active personnel. But one of the reasons why the Chinese Army isn't highlighted is not only because of the complicated communist hierarchy, but because of the geopolitics. Precisely because of the reason that you stated. If the Chinese Army has the technology, then that essentially shuts the door to America and the American allies like Israel, like Singapore, and the US and Canada. So those are the 4 countries we're currently looking at, and they all have friendly relations, which is critical if we want to scale up within these markets.
to continue with our presentation, one of them is stated, so their vision stated, which is, of course, to being a major supplier and distributor of quality, innovative, and advanced equipment globally. We feel this matches very closely with your company's ideals as well. So as we suggested here, contacting this company, sharing your vision and getting buy-in, and then moving out into getting some of that Singaporean army through inventory, the infantry, guards, as well as the artillery is a very good place to start. And then once you have created that relationship with them, you can leverage their distribution networks in, as I mentioned, Asia, as well as the Middle East. You can move into the Israeli markets at that point.
So my colleagues have done a great job of explaining kind of the qualitative aspects and the resources and the key partnerships you already have that we can leverage tomorrow to make this happen. What I like to look is at the kind of the quantitative opportunity and to highlight that this is a first step. Targeting the military is a first step in order to get product validation, rapid product development, and push this to the general consumer when it is ready to be adopted. Over 60 million wearable technology pieces will be sold by January 2018, and what we are here today is to get you a clear, concrete strategy of how we can push out 250,000 of those, most of them coming from the military market that we are proposing today, but understanding that the key growth is in this mass consumer adoption once we have the technology ready. So I'd like to go over to talk about the product right now. Currently, as it is embedded in a specialized shoe, which we have many prototypes through 3D printing.
Sorry, can you go back to that slide?
Yes.
So judges, we have 8 more minutes. So can you please overlay for us how it is that you're expecting to start to show some profit with the Singapore military, assuming things work out, and how you've overlaid funding for the company up to that?
Okay. So in terms of, I can address it in terms of the actual partnership itself. What we believe is that this would be a revenue sharing opportunity with the retail price of the ultimate boot that going down to the Singapore military would be about $300. So partnering with our key manufacturer there in Singapore, they would take a portion of that cut, and then we would retain the rest and basically invest into further product development. Now, the Singaporean Army would work heavily with us in an agile development framework so that the key customer benefits that we are trying to get are added in a very iterative process, so that we are releasing a new product or a new iteration every 2 weeks in what's called a sprint sprint backlog. So this together, I believe, My colleague over here will go over in great detail the actual funding that we are going to get in place from the Canadian government, from other sources of funding that we have identified that will keep your company afloat throughout this period. And we have a nice timeline that will tie this all together, just coming up in a few minutes.
Sorry,
Which we'll try to
just
get to.
another question.
Yes.
Agile and military aren't always synonymous. What happens if the military is not on the same time scale you are?
Absolutely. So what we can do is really always adapt, and that's the beautiful thing about Agile is that we can come in and ask them what do they want to see and take this back to the development team and work with them. It doesn't have to be on 2-week cycles. That's just kind of the pedigree of Agile development. We can of course move to cycles that is more in tune with the business cycles of the military, or just that when they actually have time. So it's a very flexible process, which I think we could adapt quite easily. So the current product as it is, what we believe is a major improvement in why we actually want to get funding to hire developers is that we believe that there's opportunities for a management dashboard. Within the military specifically, there are specific concerns held by different groups. Some groups love the fact of the biometrics, of being able to actually have a password in the way that people walk around in unsecured and secured areas. But what's really interesting that I'd like to focus on right now is the troop and squad management, and just an example of what kind of value add that we could have in our product recommendation. This is an example of a dashboard that could be easily pulled up and developed by this team that we're recommending that would really give an officer an opportunity to really see what's happening with his troops. Your technology has the great benefit of being amazingly passive, that all soldiers need to do is wear the shoes, and this information is constantly being fed into a real-time database which is being processed on the back end. And we can make important decisions. We can see what is the level of fatigue. We can see if we're running our troops too hard, and we can actually predict in the future if we need to train our troops any differently. This is just an example of the Agile backlog that I've been referring to, and we believe that through some preliminary analysis that this would take about 1,000 hours, over 1,000 hours of development time to put this dashboard together, and with this is about 130 days of 8-hour equivalents. This is also just a diagram of the network infrastructure that we'd actually put in place that we'd recommend, with SAP HANA in the back end doing the big data analytics for all the data coming into the system.
Let's get into what we need to see in the organization before all of this happens. So first of all, the VC funding of $375,000 has to happen. And on top of that, the Canadian government loans and grants, that also has to go through for the company to earn about $1.13 million, which will support it through the first RFP phase and up to the point where they do land the first big contract from the Singaporean military. Once it's at that stage, then it can scale up, it could reach into the Israeli military, then you can go into the general consumer market, which we ultimately envision will be the backbone of Plantiga's strategy to be the leader in innovative footwear. So let's, yeah.
Is that 375K funding intended to do all the work to get us to the next phase of development and fund things like that back-end infrastructure that you just threw out there, SAP, etc.?
Can I answer that? Absolutely not. So the government loans and grants can actually provide a significant addition to that. And on top of all this, this is only going to take you to the first cycle. The contract that's signed will be funding the Agile process, the 2-week iterative process, which is an alternative from the traditional waterfall development process, which has been used in the military. So these are the people that you need to hire before any of this happens, and these are the available sources of funding. So in order for a successful VC funding to go through, for that $375,000 to go through, these 4 principles have to be met, and I'll let you read that. The grant and the low-interest loans provided by the Canadian government, this is key. SHRED, this is the most significant Canadian grant, which has surprisingly not been taken advantage by the organization as of yet, and it's absolutely crucial that this money, a grant that doesn't need to be repaid, has to be taken advantage. BDC, Canada Small Business Financial Programs, MyTax, they're offering loans at almost no interest. So these are crucial resources as well.
So this is the timeline that we're about to show you now. The 2 points that I really wanted to emphasize here were the fact that... The 2 points that I wanted to emphasize were the fact that this was a 4-year process, as well as we really wanted to focus on the patent filing at day 1 to make sure that your company can move forward. And with this, we also see that for gross revenue, we'll be looking at about $12 million, and with some added costs, we do feel that your company can reach an ROI of 63% over the 4 years.
The future of being a global leader in custom smart adaptive footwear lies, first of all, gaining a foothold in the military nation. Once this foothold is established, then you can look for a joint venture with an Adidas or Nike. They'll take you seriously as a company with more than $0 of revenue. At this point, while the potential is great, it's simply infeasible. And the healthcare adoption, these are the laggards of your adoption curve, and they will come after the funding and the proof of military nation. Thank you very much.